I initially wanted to come in here and do the whole speech from Office Space about how I sneak in the side door and spend 15 minutes just staring at my desk.
I'm not responsible for it, so.
One of the first decisions I made when I came into office was probably one of the most impactful. It was we allowed beards at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office for the first time in history. And I get some questions on this where why would I do that? And this is exactly why. It's really simple. And I spent my time in the military and then my 24 years at the Sheriff's Office not being able to come to work with a beard. And I come into office, I see things just a little bit differently. Why not? Law enforcement is difficult enough in this day and age. If somebody wants to come to work with a beard, I'm good with it. And what I tell people is I care more about how my deputies that show up to work treat people than whether they have a beard or not. So for me, it was a very simple decision, and it was probably my most popular decision of 2020.
Community support was another unexpected thing in 2020, given the social unrest and the feelings towards law enforcement. You would have expected the community to maybe not be as supportive of us.
A lot of our precincts were, constantly having deliveries of food from the community.
Matter of fact, the uniform's getting a little bit more tight for all the things that are being delivered.
We had local distillers making us hand sanitizer.
Everybody says that our hand sanitizer was a little bit different than everybody else's because it smelled like moonshine. So it was pretty comical.
Snohomish County residents and businesses were outstanding in 2020, and I'd like to actually thank them for everything that they did for the Sheriff's Office.
The citizens of our county really have the backs of law enforcement, are very supportive of us.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, do you want me to stop over here?
Yeah, keep it.
Yeah,
I think for Sheriff's Office, it's a unit that basically can focus on anti-crime. As police, right, that should be what we do all the time. But Directed Patrol specifically looks at certain areas of crime, whether it's people, whether it's houses we're having problems with, stolen cars, stolen property, wherever we can do to assist the community in order to help decrease the crime in those areas.
We try to work closely with the patrol deputies themselves and take information from them with problems they're having, whether it's a problem house or a problem area or a problem person, and then we can go and focus on that area or that house or that person. A lot of times these guys south are handling 20 or 30 calls a day, so that makes handling that house or the area really hard for them. Luckily for Directed Patrol, we have more time because we're not necessarily driven by the call screen. We can go focus on centering the highway or Motel 6 or wherever else that person is that needs some attention. As a taxpayer, that's what I want. I want deputies to have time to go and focus on my neighborhood and make sure that if things aren't supposed to be there or something suspicious, to go contact them, or if there's a problem area, to go spend their time on it. But like I said, the patrol guys are so busy a lot of times, they just don't have any time in their day to do that.
I think the coolest part about ending 2020 was just the fact that Sheriff Fortney and our administration, along with, I'm going to give props, County Council, being able to still support us and the community with the budget. And Sheriff Fortney seeing that how important Directed Patrol was just to this community in general and what we can do to impact these areas of high crime, high drug trafficking, or drug use, which leads to more crime. And we can get in there and actually make a difference. And to have that support from your administration, to have that support from County Council with the budget approvals, and then just from your boss, the head man, I mean, that's pretty cool because you just don't see that in a lot of agencies. That's what I'm looking forward to, is that with Directed Patrol, we can go in these areas 2021, make a larger impact, and make people feel safe again.
Throughout 2020, I think as people were very desperate to get outside and do something.
Trailheads started opening up. River and lake accesses started opening up. We saw a huge surge in people going to recreate in Snohomish County. And that's when it all started to get really busy for us.
It was just the sheer number of missions seemed to be the main difference between 2020 and years prior.
Overall, our missions and our consultations for missions were up about 30% from 2019. So that would make sense, unfortunately, that our recoveries were up as well.
An unfortunate characteristic of our job many times is to be involved when fatalities have occurred.
Any mission we do that's a body recovery and is a fatality, it can get to you. You know, we try to put the emotions aside during the mission while we're doing it, but when we get back and we talk to the family, even afterward. One family member came up here recently. His son had fallen into a crevasse up on a glacier, and our team recovered his son's body. And he came to us a month later up here and thanked us. It was emotional for all, even, you know, a month, 2 months later, it's still emotional.
When we confront people or when we're attempting to arrest people, there's kind of a saying that time and distance are a friend, meaning we want more time to evaluate what is occurring or what the suspect is doing, more time to gather information, and more distance to give us to be able to react to whatever they do. Canine is a huge part of providing time and distance in rapidly unfolding, very tense and uncertain circumstances when we are trying to arrest suspects. When we are tracking for that suspect, we're tracking for someone who is resisting arrest, meaning that they've fled on foot or attempting to hide from law enforcement. They've generally committed some sort of violent crime, and there's an immediate or danger to law enforcement or others in the community.
Police! Police being searched by police dog. You're under arrest for burglary. Roll out now. You failed to do so. You have been hurt.
One of the problems that we encountered is we've been down to 3 handlers. That does not get us close to 24-hour coverage, so there were days and whole shifts or parts of the week that went without canine coverage. When Sheriff Fortney was elected, one of the things that he really wanted to do was to get canine up to what would be proper staffing for an agency our size.
2020 was clearly a trying year for everybody in the world. Nobody was untouched by the pandemic in one, shape or form. The big thing for us here looking at 2020 is how we were able to all come together and make it work. The fact we can look back and say that we didn't have an outbreak in our facility, we didn't have any deaths related to COVID in our facility or with our staff. We've stayed at pretty much zero. We've maybe at most had 1 or 2 COVID positive inmates in custody at a time, but every one of those has been isolated and provided medical care 24/7. We had staff that were literally using their own credit cards, going to local hardware stores and finding whatever PPE they can get their hands on, and we would reimburse them, of course. But it got that desperate. We also had a lot of organizations that, like the public defenders, they donated a bunch of the cloth masks for our inmates because it was important for us that not only do we have enough protective equipment for staff, but also for the inmates under our care as well. For us to pivot back in March and completely uproot our operations and change how we do business, how we've done business for decades, was pretty incredible. Usually one procedural change in a facility like this will take weeks to implement, if not months, and even then it'll be a little hit and miss. For us to completely redo every aspect of our operation in such a compressed period of time, it was pretty incredible and very gratifying for me to see our people come together.
One of the things I really was moved by personally in 220 was our staff. I felt that both custody and medical staff and mental health staff really came together in this crisis, and you have thousands of hours of experience with many different roles, all coming together, doing their part. One isn't more than the other, and there was real synergy and teamwork that I found. And while things may be difficult, there would be uncertainty, you'd hear all sorts of fears or anxieties going on, we came to the top of our game.
For a lot of police officers, including myself, the killing of George Floyd changed things for us significantly. I think that as a profession, we acknowledge that we hold such a high responsibility, and that to be able to use lethal force when it's lawful and take away someone's freedoms when they've committed a crime is something that's so important and that requires the public trust that when that's violated, the outcry is natural, and I think it's justified. To come to work knowing that a big part of the public no longer supported us in what we did, regardless of the fact that we did it well and we did it for the right reasons. It was tough. There were mornings where I didn't want to come to work. And then I tell myself, but you're going to do it right. You're going to show them how many of us in this profession do it correctly for the right reasons. So I'd get up and come to work. And I still believe that, but it wears on you. And it was tough. It was exhausting. So the opioid crisis, I think, will forever change our society and our world, which is just sad. And now I think to go to the synthetic drugs that can be produced in such a mass quantity and consumed in such a microgram amount to achieve the same high is beyond dangerous. And I think we've seen it with numerous fentanyl overdoses and the ability to conceal this fentanyl in different, the fake pills and the accessibility for young people. And I worry about what that will continue to be. So it's tough for us. We will investigate a case that all of a sudden will come upon thousands and thousands of fentanyl pills that when you aggregate the quantity could kill, hundreds of people. And they're being distributed like it's nothing. And it's affordable. It's $8 to $10 a pill. So, anybody can really get high. And there's no regulation in it as far as how those pills are pressed and how they're distributed. So it's extremely dangerous. And I think, the talk of legalizing drugs and the talk of legalizing major drugs just lends itself to such a slippery slope that it worries me what the future will be like for my kids when it comes to drugs.
+25 years of using diet pills, alcohol, whatever. And now they're out of my system, and I just needed someone to be kind for a minute. I just needed someone to be kind. I didn't care if they had a badge or a Walmart smock. I needed someone to just hear me out because I was so fed up and the anger, and I'm already on this whole roller coaster of emotions. I was diagnosed with cancer last April, end of April. I was still using. My dad died June 25th. July 9th, I had a double mastectomy. My daughter's got health issues and stuff, and it's, you can't go on like that for too much longer, and it's hard to watch, and I know it's coming, so it's hard to get excited because there's always this dark cloud, and you can't prepay sadness for losing someone. You can't here's these amount of tears and we'll just take it, and I know it's coming, and it's hard.
The idea of bridging the gap of communication between the Black community and law enforcement.
In Snohomish County, Black community is extremely underrepresented. A place where community gathers are barbershops, salons, places like that. It's kind of a place where everybody can go and kind of talk about the issues. We figured that already being a safe space for the Black community, it would be a good idea to have any conversations with law enforcement about how their institution affects our community. That's how the whole barbershop idea got tied in. That and Elton already being a barber and having micro versions of this kind of happening in his chair when he would be with law enforcement.
There was a lot of trust building that occurred in that time. There was a lot of tension. I remember some of the first meetings it was tense, man, like being in the same, room as the sheriff and some of his deputies. Like you could like feel the tension. But as we started to have meetings monthly, we got to know the sheriff and his deputies. That trust, kind of developed over time. That trust that developed over time, kind of, as a Black man, is kind of like I don't feel the same way when police are behind me now, in a way, that I felt before. There was just a relationship building that happened, and we felt that if we can kind of foster that relationship that we acquired with the sheriff and put it into a situation or programs, that we can kind of rebuild that trust with the Black community as well in Snohomish County, just like we built that trust personally with the sheriff.
If we start from the root of the issue and talk through it together, that hopefully these two groups of people won't be so separate, but in the end, it won't just be the Black community and law enforcement, but just be one community.
So after about 2 months of being closed, we decided we'll open on limited hours, and we'll properly social distance as best we can, take one customer at a time by appointment, about 16 people a day versus 70 people a day. Meanwhile, all the other agencies are still closed, so people are coming to us. These are not factoring in also the riots that were happening in Seattle, the fear that was going on because of the pandemic, where people were hoarding toilet paper and people were hoarding meat and dog food. They were also hoarding guns and coming in to get their CPLs. In 2020, we processed more than 16,000 concealed pistol license applications. And that is more than what we did in 2012 when Sandy Hook happened.
With the efforts and the resources involving genetic genealogy, we were actually able to identify her this last year and put a name to her remains. So she'll always be known as Precious Jane Doe, but now we know who she is and where she came from. People who have committed crimes in the past and they're sitting at home right now worried about their DNA being somewhere that will link them to a homicide. So people should be worried and concerned. Science can catch up to people.
It was a hard year for law enforcement. We lost 2 officers in the line of duty, one with Bothell Police Department and one with Tulalip. We also lost one of our own corrections deputies here that worked at the jail. So emotionally, it was a very challenging year as well, in addition to the pandemic and the nationwide civil unrest that we saw.
Corrections is the largest bureau we have, and we've been trying to connect us as one sheriff's office. And, with corrections suffering a tragedy in 2020, losing a longtime deputy early in the year, some of the unity was unexpected, but it was driven by the employees and how they wanted to express their sorrow or their support for all of the corrections deputies that were hurting. And just some patrol supervisors decided to set up an impromptu procession outside of corrections the night shortly after, and the block was circled in blue light from all the patrol cars lined up to show support. And I think that probably did more to unify us as a sheriff's office than anything.
Deputy Ellis specifically, he was one of those guys that, when you saw him, you had to smile. It's not just a loss of a coworker, but really a loss of a family member.
We're one family, and we do support each other, and when one part of our family's hurting, everybody's hurting.
That's our motto in our correction bureau. We can get through this.
In 2020, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office Patrol Division responded to over 200,000 calls for service in our county, and our corrections staff processed more than 15,000 inmates at the Snohomish County Jail. In previous years, the Sheriff's Office created a magazine-style annual report that took a considerable number of employee hours to create and that no one in our community even read. We felt that channel for communicating was less valuable, and we wanted a new way to finish each year and share our journey with Snohomish County residents. I decided instead that this video would be better suited and more transparent as a Sheriff's Office report back to the community on the events that drove the year 2020.
Thank you for keeping us safe.
We are accountable and dedicated to the community we protect. I hope this video can help serve as a window into the Sheriff's Office successes, difficulties, and achievements during the year 2020.